share my screen. Okay, cool. So today we're going to be talking about authentication and authorization, aka login reg, right? Everyone's favorite thing. So I wanted to put it out there in the beginning just to kind of see if anyone had any concept of what authentication and authorization, how are those things different? So a lot of times you hear those terms thrown around, but I want to make sure we kind of have a baseline understanding for what we're talking about there. Any hands on that? Hey, you want to say something, Francis? Because you're muted right now. No, you don't. Albert, you got any ideas on this one?
In terms of authentication?
So yeah, like, what are the differences between authentication and authorization?
Authentication is pretty much making sure the user exists and that the password matches that user. And authorization is kind of like admin, regular user, or guest kind of thing, levels of access.
Yeah, exactly. You're on the right track there. So again, what he was saying is that with authentication, we're really just trying to determine, is this person who he or she says that he or she is? And then on the authorization front, we're trying to determine, does this person actually have the access to access a particular resource? So for instance, if we were on Facebook or something like that, and I'm logged in as myself, well, I shouldn't be able to go in and edit Francis's details, right? So that's what we're talking about when we talk about authorization. Yeah, exactly. And if I could, you'd have to watch out. All right, so let's see what this is going to look like. I'm going to open up this project that we've been working on. I've got my cities project open. Close out the chat here for now. And then I'm going to jump over. We're mainly going to be doing like the server side stuff this morning. And then depending on how far we get, maybe we'll do some of the client side stuff in the afternoon. So I'm going to hop into the server directory. Make this a little bigger. Ooh, maybe that's too big. And then here we're going to install a couple modules, which we didn't have before. So I'm going to say npm I, and then the things that we want are going to be JSON web token. Okay, so this is a library we're going to be using. And another one that we're going to be using is called bcrypt. I may also install something called .env. I'm just going to install it for right now. This would be like slightly different than what they've got in the platform, but I'll talk about why that is if we end up using it. Okay, so those guys are installed. We're good to go. Let's open up our server folder. And inside here, of course, we've got our models. Actually, what I wanted to do is actually change Git branches in this right now. And this would probably be a good practice for anybody who's thinking about getting this login reg going. So if like for instance, if you're doing your belt exam and you've got everything working for the red belt, but then you want to go and try the black belt features, you can check out a different branch in your Git repository. So let me go back to my main directory here, and let's say git checkout -b, and we'll say auth. Okay, so I've switched to a new branch called auth. That way I don't mess up, all the stuff I had in my master branch, right? Okay, cool. So inside here in our models, right now, the only model that we have is a city model, but I also want to add a user model so that we can have users here. So we'll say user .model.js. Okay. You guys remember we need to bring in Mongoose for this, right? Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Don't know why. Wire Mongoose. Okay. All right, and then let's create our user schema. So we'll say const user schema. Oh, something in the chat here. Erica said the meeting keeps crashing. Huh. I wonder if maybe her connection is unstable or something. Okay, yeah, she's here, cool. So new mongoose.schema. Okay, and then inside here are going to be the things that we need. So we probably want first name, type is going to be a string on that one. And then we'll say required, or actually I'm going to do min length. And this would be an array, so I'll say the min length for the first name is going to be 2 characters. And we'll say, please enter a first name of 2 or more. I can't even see what I'm typing. That's great. So I'm just going to duplicate this down here for the last name. Last name there. Okay. And then we'll probably also have an email, right? Forgot a comma. So you got email. This will also be type, whoops, type string. Okay. And then here you might think that we're going to do required, but I'll probably just skip that for now because we're going to use what's called a custom validator function. Okay, so I'm going to supply a validate here. And then we'll have this array. Let me just jump into the platform here because they had, whoops. Hold on one second. So we've got this validate function that we can use. Now my understanding with email validation with regex is that it's not 100% foolproof, but this should get us most of the way there. So let's just grab this validate function. Okay, so as you guys can see, it's an arrow function. It's taking in some value, and then we're making sure that it matches this specific pattern right here.
Can you run us through like the breakdown of what that validator line means?
Well, let's see. Okay. It's going to take kind of a while because you can see we've got a bunch of different things in here. But when you see, I'll kind of talk about some general things with regex.
That's okay. I'll ask on my own time. I don't want to.
Yeah.
At the end, so I don't.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But just know that when you see square brackets like this, basically it's saying any character that matches something inside of that, and the plus just means that we have to have at least one of those.
Okay.
Okay, so that's just kind of like a general vibe of what we're seeing here.
All right. So
let's drop this in through our code. The first thing is going to be the function itself. Unique field to name. Yeah, we can do that as well. Hang on one second, I'll do that. Okay, so the message that we want for this is probably please enter a valid email address. Okay, and then as Prativo is saying, if we wanted to ensure uniqueness inside the database, which is probably a good idea, we could say unique true. Okay. All right, so what else are we going to need? We're probably going to need some kind of a password to allow them to log in. Password. So that validator is always the same. Well, it is always the same if we're validating for emails, right? If we were validating some other type of input, then you might have a different validation function. Okay. This just allows us to do some kind of a custom validation function. It wouldn't have to be an email validation. We could use it for something else entirely, but if we're validating emails, yeah, then just go ahead and use this one. All right, password type string. Okay, we can do min length on this if we want. So if we want a password to have 8 characters, whoops, we'll say 8, and then we'll say, please enter a password of at least 8 characters. Okay, and that's pretty much all we want to store. So we got our first name, last name, email, password. That's pretty solid. Let's add this options object here where we can have timestamps, right? Timestampies. Okay. And then we're going to have something interesting which we haven't seen before. So let me hop back to the platform here. If you look down here, we may want to force a user to confirm his or her password, which I don't know about you guys, but those things really annoy me. You know what I mean? Like forcing you to retype in your password, and sometimes they try to disable pasting into the confirmation field, so you got to retype it. What a pain. Yeah, totally annoying. All right, but what we're going to do is we're going to create this thing called a virtual field, which is not actually going to be stored in the database at all. It's just going to be used so that we can successfully validate that they've entered in the same password confirmation that you know that the password is. All right, so let's try to do this. We'll say user schema dot virtual. Okay, and you can see we've got the name of this virtual thing, so we'll call this password confirmation. Okay, and then we've got this options object, transient of Java. So in the options object, we're going to create a couple functions, one of which is a getter and the other one is a setter. Okay, so as you can see, we're okay to use arrow functions for this. So let's say get is going to be a function that simply returns this dot password confirmation. Okay. The setter function is going to take in a value, and then we're going to say this dot underscore password confirmation equals that val. All right, I'm gonna pause right there and see if you guys have any questions about what this is doing, because I'm pretty sure you do. Sorry, not sure if I missed, but what is? Oh, what is set? So set is just a function that allows us to actually set this value. So in other words, when we invoke the set function, we're going to take in some value, and then we're going to set this attribute here on the object to val, right? When that gets invoked. Why do we need a get and set for this? Constructor, getter, and setter. Okay. Yeah, it's not really a constructor, getter, and setter because we're not really the ones creating the object in this case, right? Looks to me like this this virtual function is actually creating the object. And is this the same get as before, like get and post? No, completely different. Yeah, those are HTTP methods, not the same thing. Okay, so again, just so is get pulling the information from the form submitted. So it's actually going to pull the information from, yeah, ultimately that's where it's going to come from. So when we try to create a user, we're going to use the rec.body. So yeah, nice, good call on that. What about underscore password confirmation? You can think of these as like private fields on the object. So whenever you see an underscore before a name like that, it's something that we're not really meant to touch directly. All right. So that's just us setting the getters and setters here. Can you repeat what virtual means? Yes, I was going to come back to that as well. So what virtual is doing is it's creating this extra field for our documents that won't actually be stored in the database. So we won't have, when we go and get the information for our user, each user is not going to have a password confirmation field in there. It's just something that we're using to ensure that things validate when we're creating a new user. Okay, cool. So let's keep going. The other thing that we want to do is we want to establish a validation for before we can actually save something to ensure that that document is correct. And this is how we can do it. So we can call this function, which is pre. So let's do this, user schema dot pre. And this means that we're going to run something before the actual regular validation that, that Mongoose is going to run for us. And then we're going to create a callback function here, your guys' favorite. Now notice here that our function, our callback function, needs to take something in called next. That's Erica's favorite, yeah. All right. So what next is next is essentially a function that will run if everything has checked out okay. You can think of this function right here that we're writing as something that's sort of sitting in, it's sitting right before the regular Mongoose validation. So in other words, if everything checks out inside this function, we'll go ahead and run whatever process was supposed to come next. But if it doesn't, then we are going to invalidate things. Okay, and that's where our virtual field is going to come into play. So you can see if we're basically checking to make sure that the password that they've supplied matches the password confirmation here. Okay, so we'll say if this.password does not equal this.password confirmation, what we want to do is we want to say this.invalidate. Okay. So in other words, what we're saying is that this document is not valid. We cannot insert it into the database because those two things don't match. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to call this next function. Okay, so when we're invalidating, we can specify what was problematic. We can say password confirmation. Please ensure that your passwords match. Okay, let me okay, terminals out. Cool. Questions about this, lines 40 to 46. Is everyone still there?
Can you just run through the dot pre on line 40?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry if you covered it already.
That's okay. Yeah, it's probably confusing for a lot of people. So what we're saying is that for the user schema, when we call the pre-function, we're saying we want something to happen before the normal validation is going to take place. Okay? And then what we want to happen is this function that we've defined right here. Okay? So the function takes something in called next, and the next is whatever process is going to run next, which will probably be the validation process itself, right? So before we even get to the regular validations, we're just doing this extra check on the passwords to make sure that they're matching. Okay, did we write this function and validate? Anyone? No. Cool. Who's providing that for us? Is validate an arbitrary name? Validate or invalidate? Oh, we're talking about this right here? No, that is not arbitrary. So yeah, it's coming from Mongoose. So Mongoose has these specific steps that it runs through. This is way hard. Yeah. Sorry, Hutan. Remember though, this is going to be a potential black belt thing. So if you're struggling on the regular stuff, I don't want you to worry too much about it. Yeah. So no, this validate word is not arbitrary. Mongoose has a number of steps that it needs to do whenever we're saving a document. So we're just saying, hey, let's run this extra step before you even get to your regular validations. Okay. And again, the step that we're running is just this callback function. So is that a variable? Is which a variable? Validate. Well, no, it's not. It's a string, right? Yeah, anytime you see something surrounded by quotes, then it is not a variable. Yeah. All right, so we're pretty good with pre, right? Just something that's going to run before the regular Mongoose validations. Okay, now that we're done with this part, we also need to actually export the model from here, right? Otherwise, there's not really a whole lot that we can do with it. So I can say module.exports equals mongoose.model. Okay, I'm going to say what the name of the model is. In this case, it's going to be user. And then I need to pass in this user schema, right? Any questions on the export? You guys are probably okay with that, I'd imagine. I hope. All right, so let's keep going. Now, the other thing that we need to do is we actually want to hash this password. So the reason why we want to hash the password is because if I'm storing plain text passwords in my database and somebody somehow gets access to that, well, it'd be pretty easy for them to know, say, what Francis is normally using as a password. You know, if Francis doesn't use a password manager, maybe she's using the same one for all her sites or something like that. So if you guys aren't using password managers, probably a good time to start doing so, because it's pretty hard to have unique passwords across different sites and have those. Is it the most common hasher that we'd see in the professional world? Yeah. Yeah, you'll see that quite regularly. All right, so we installed the module already, but we need to actually bring it into this code in order to be able to use it. Okay, so let's go back in here. Decrypt, acquire, decrypt. Okay, and now I'm going to have another one of these pre-functions here. We're going to say user schema dot pre, and this time we're going to say before the document is saved. Same situation though, we're taking in a next to this function as well, right? And what we want to do before we actually save the document is that we want to make some alteration to the password. We want to hash it right on the spot. So let's say decrypt dot hash. And it's telling us what it needs. So it needs the data. Can anyone tell me where the data is going to come from? Form, input, rect.body. Yeah, from form. Totally. Okay. Somebody said this password. It was Lawrence. So this password should be correct, right? Because as we saw up here, we have this password available on the object itself. And same thing goes down here, right? This is the actual password. Okay, and the second argument that we're going to supply here is just the number of rounds. It's a salt or the number of rounds. I don't want you guys to worry about this. We can enter in 10 for that, and that would be basically the higher the number that you put in there, theoretically, the more secure it would be, but it's going to be more work for your computer to do. So if you were to put like 100 or 1,000 or something like that, it might get those fans spinning. Okay, what do you guys think that this returns us? That's a good question. I don't know if it exponentially grows. But if you find out, let us know. What do you guys think this returns? Yeah, look at that. Promises are coming in. Hash. Uh-oh, Prativa. Doesn't return the hash, right? Turns a promise. Okay. So then, whoops. We need to provide, yeah, she said sorry. We need to provide a callback function. So we'll say we get the hashed, hashed PW. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I should reset this password. Actually, wait, hold on one second. Let me open up a callback function here. And I believe that we will reset this password to be hashed PW. And then we're going to call that next function down there. Now, why did I not call next down here? Can anyone tell me? What's going to happen if I call next here on line 54? You only want to call it when the promise has resolved. Very good, Aya. Exactly. So what's going to happen here is that if I just call it right away, it means that we'll end up saving this new user before the password has been completely hashed. Okay? By putting it inside of our success callback, we're saying we want to call this next function once it's been hashed. Okay? Now notice that I haven't done anything with the .catch. I'm going to assume that our password is hashing properly, but you know, maybe you'd want to have some error handling. I don't think for what we're doing, you're going to run into any problems with that per se. All right. So let's make sure we did that. So we set the password to the hashed password, so we're good there. Any questions on this before we move on to the registration part? So you can see that our model has gotten a little bit larger here, or our model file, I should say. Okay, so let's move on to registration. And here in registration, you can see that we're going to create a new user controller. So let's do that. Inside our controllers, let's say users.controller.js. Okay, I need to import something here. What do you guys think that is? The model, very good, Lawrence. Appreciate it. Model, okay, so we'll say plus user equals, I'm going to require, I need to go up one level into my models slash user.model. Okay, and then what we were doing from our other controller is we were exporting an object. I'm going to do that again. So we'll say module.exports equals an object. And here's where we'll have our different methods. Okay, so we'll have a create, or we could call it register if we want. Okay, and when we're registering, we want to take in the rec and the res, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say user.create. We're going to pass in the rec.body. And then if things go as planned, what are we going to have access to here? Anyone want to tell me? The new user, perfect. Good job. So say user, I'm gonna call it new user just so we keep this a little bit more clear. Okay, so I'm gonna return back, whoops. I'm gonna say res.json, right? And then we'll say, I don't know, status is success. And I don't know that I want to return back the entire user, because if I return the whole user back to the client, I'm also returning the hashed password, right? Maybe I don't want to do that. So maybe we can just say ID is going to be the new user dot underscore ID. Okay. Dot catch. We would have error, and probably, if I remember correctly, let me check our cities control. I think we were returning. Oh, we were just returning the error as it was. Looks like. Okay, so we'll say res dot status. So let's say something was wrong, right? JSON error. Okay. All right. Anybody know what else I'm going to need to do if I'm actually going to use this in my project? So we did our model. We've got our users controller, which is kind of up and running now. How else do I get this active? Routes, nice. Well done. So we'll probably need a users routes file. So we'll say users.routes.js. Okay. And what am I going to have to bring into my users routes? Controller, good. So say user CTL, users CTL equals require. I've got to go out one level into my controllers, and then users.controller. Okay, what do we think that we're going to export from here? Everything. I like that answer. Just export it all. I don't care what it is. All right, so we'll say module.exports equals a function, just like we were doing in the other one. The function is going to take in an application. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply our routes individually. So I'll say app.post, because this is for creating a user, right? We'll say /API/users. Okay. And then I'm going to apply what over here as the second argument? The controller method, indeed. So we'll say users CTL dot register, right? Okay. I'm still not completely done. Anyone know what else I need to do to get this route active? Yeah, I got to go back to server.js and import this function, and then I need to apply it against my application, right? So let's go in here. I'll say, actually, I'm going to const user routes. And we're going to require, okay, we're going to require in the routes folder users.routes. Okay, and then in order to get that to to actually take hold, I need to invoke this function that user routes exported against my application, right? So we'll say user routes, oops. And we're going to invoke that function against the application. All right, so now is probably a good time to actually test things out. Maybe we should have tested things a little earlier, but not quite sure that we could have since these routes had to be active, right? So let's get in, let's get the project running. I'll go into my server folder and we'll do nodemon server.js. Okay. You can see that we're getting a deprecation warning here from Mongoose. So it's saying ensure index is deprecated, use create indexes instead. So if we want to make that go away, we should be able to go inside our config here. And this was because we were trying to establish unique on the user emails. So create indexes true. Not supported. All right, Mongoose, you're making me mad. Create index instead. Wait. Oh, I think I had this wrong. Use create index is the proper option here. Okay, there we go. So deprecation warning gone. Cool, our server is running. Let's see if we can actually register a user. So I'll open up Postman. Create a new post request here. Gonna go localhost 4000 users. Okay, and then we want to always change this body to raw. JSON. Also, if you guys don't want to deal with this raw JSON business, you could jump into headers here and just type this out, and it would have the same effect. So content type is going to be application/JSON. Okay, so if I go in the body, let's just create a new user. So first name, email, okay, password. Okay, I've got my 8-character limit. So let's give this a shot. Hey, we know our password confirmation is working because I didn't even supply one. Okay, password confirmation. Man, those things are annoying. Password. Sweet. So we created a user and I got back the ID as expected. If I were to go into my Mongo shell, let's see if we can take, why did we get that deprecated warning? It's because we were trying to establish that emails of users had to be unique. So that's the only time that you'll see that particular warning come up is if you try to use unique true. Okay, so let's go to our Mongo shell. Okay, and then we'll say use cities. Okay, so we'll say cities. Dot users dot find dot pretty. You can see I've forgotten how to use the Mongo shell in all of a few days. Okay, so there we go. We've got my first name, my last name, my email, my password hash here, and then our created at and updated at there. So let's see what would happen if I were to try to recreate this same user. Okay, so here we actually got an error. You guys can see that the error is a little bit different than what we've been seeing before. Duplicate error collection. But what you could do if you're trying to check for duplicates is look at this code here. The code is always going to be 11,000 if it was due to a duplication problem. Yeah, unique work. Pretty excited about that. Pretty cool. All right, so let me see how faded everyone is at this point. Oops, let me close this out. Do we want to get into JSON web tokens and cookies right now, or do we want to just break and then re-pick this up in the afternoon? I think I can create like a, yeah, I need to rewatch anyway. I think I can create a poll in here somehow. Let me see if I can do this. Add a question. Oh, Jesus. Never mind. Yeah, for real. Pick up in the afternoon. Same match. Okay, so everyone wants to pick this up in the afternoon. That's cool. I'm all right with that. All right, so let's just take a look at what we've done and make sure that we have a pretty good handle on that before we break here. So let me close out the terminal. Go back to our user model. I'm not going to go over the schema. I mean, the main part of the schema. I think we're pretty good with that. Actually, we'll talk about this real quick. If it seems like I'm meandering a little bit, it's because this Zoom stuff, like sometimes I'm trying to get to certain spots on the screen, but it's like I can't seem to get to them. So I apologize to that. About that, sorry. All right, so I want to have somebody read through this. And I'm going to go with Erica on this. What's happening from line 22 to 25?
We are using a validate coming from the email object.
Right, so this email object has a key called validate inside of it.
Which has an array,
Okay.
and it's taking a callback function.
Good.
Which is related with the hash, which is
No,
those
the
weird.
callback function has nothing, you mean the password hash?
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with that.
Those weird looking things. That's oh, that's that email.
regex.
Yes.
That's a regular expression. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so we are checking if you're gonna have like a unique email.
No, that would be up here. So on line 21, we're ensuring uniqueness of the email. So we're telling Mongoose, hey, do not insert a new document in the database if it has a duplicate email. But here in validate, what we're doing is we're trying to ensure that it's actually a properly formed email address. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, keep in mind that it doesn't always mean that an email is valid, because I can enter something that's totally bogus. Like I can say a@b.com, and that would be a valid email address in terms of its formatting, but probably wouldn't work, right?
Correct.
So this is just ensuring that the actual format of the email is valid. If we wanted to make sure that an email address worked, then we could send some kind of a confirmation code to that email address and make sure that they clicked on our link or something like that. But again, you guys don't need to worry about that.
And the test at value, that's a function?
Correct. Yeah. So what this is doing is it's taking this regular expression right here, and then it's running the value against that regular expression, making sure that the value matches that pattern.
Okay.
Okay. So if it doesn't, then the error that we're going to get is this guy right here, line 24. That was our custom error message.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
On 36 to 39, Hutan, tell me what's going on there. Wait, you're on your PC. You do have a microphone though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So what lines?
On 36 to 39.
Oh, I have no idea. I
All
don't
right.
know.
Well, I see a parenthesis right here,
Okay,
right?
okay, there's a function and then we use user schema dot virtual. I don't know where they come from.
So this function is not something that we wrote. So who do you think wrote that, or where are we getting it from?
Mongo,
From Mongoose. So
Mongoose.
Mongo is our database, but
Yeah.
Mongoose is the interface that kind of sits in between our application and Mongo.
Okay, and then we create a function, and then it's for password confirmation, and then there's an inside an object we create a get, and then I don't know.
And
The
what is
last,
get? So you can see our key is called get.
yeah,
What's the value?
the value is a function,
Good, nice.
and this dot underline confirmation. What was the dot underline for again?
So the underline just means this is, you could think of this as like a private field on the object.
Okay.
Anytime you see that underscore like that, it's something that we generally won't touch ourselves, but it is something that is available on the object.
Okay, and then there's this.
JavaScript doesn't really have the same sense of privacy, at least not currently, as exists in some other object-oriented languages.
Okay, and then there's a set with the variable value val.
Mm-hmm.
There's another function, this password confirmation equals val,
Right.
and
Good.
then that's
So
enough.
yeah, all we're doing here is we're taking in some val,
Yeah.
which will be, you know, whatever password confirmation they entered, and we're setting it on the object, right?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Thank you, Hutan. Let's go to Nick Gata. We have a special guest today, and he didn't know he was going to have to read code. Nick, are you there? Oh, he's not even listening. All right. Thanks, Nick. Lawrence, let's have 41 to 47. Lawrence,
Nick, author.
there you are.
Nick,
Yeah.
Nick was there. Nick is here too. I don't know.
Well, yeah, we have two Nicks, but one of them is already a graduate. He wanted to come back and see login reg, and I guess
Oh,
not in front of his screen right now.
okay.
Yeah. Oh shoot, you're cutting out.
So sorry. So this means we're gonna. So we're gonna run Mongo's function pre-function,
Mm-hmm.
and in this we have first parameter. First parameter
So the first argument that we're providing is just a string called validate, right?
string validate. Second one is a function.
Mm-hmm.
Now the function is in the function next. So arguments next.
Correct. Yeah, it's going to take in a function called next. Good.
Connect. And so in the function, if the password isn't match the confirmed password, they're gonna run this function. So it's called invalidate, and they're gonna send a message on this password confirmation. Say, please ensure that your passwords match.
Right. So we can kind of think about this as something, if this were inside of our schema directly, we would have a field called password confirmation. And then we would have, say, a special validation function, for instance. And then we'd have a message to go with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it failed that special validation, then we would supply that message.
Yes. And then after this, we're gonna run the next function.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So here we're saying if they didn't match, then let's go ahead and invalidate this document because we don't want to insert it into the database, right? Their password does not match the confirmation, so therefore they're going to have to try again. All right, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay.
Geo, let's do 49 to 55.
We have user schema dot free.
Yeah.
Save. It takes in a string save.
Yeah. So here it's not so much that the function takes in a string called save. We are invoking the function with the string save, right?
Okay.
Okay. And then the second argument that we're providing here is what?
It's a function.
Function. Good.
And takes in next.
Good.
And then bcrypt.hash is gonna have this dot password. I still don't know what the 10 does. What does the number 10 do?
So basically, this just kind of like bumps up the security of the password hash a little bit. So by adding some salt to the password hash, it jumbles it up even further. So the higher the number that you pass in here, the more work it's going to do to jumble up that, to scramble up that password hash.
Okay.
Just make it a little bit more secure.
Okay. And then then it's gonna take in hash password.
So since we have a .then, what did invoking the hash function return us?
That password but hashed.
No. Anytime we have to call .then, that means that we had what returned?
The password?
Did we ever define next? No, Aya, we did not define next because we are not invoking this function. You see how this is a callback function? We're not the ones invoking that, right? So Mongoose is going to be the one invoking that, and when they invoke it, they will pass in the next function to us. Yeah. Okay, cool. So what did this return, Gio, on line 50?
I thought it was the password hashed, but I guess that wasn't it.
Yeah, so if I commented this out and we just did a console log on this guy right here, it returned us a promise, right? It's saying, hey, eventually I'll get back to you with that hashed password. That's why we had to chain a call to .then and pass in a callback function. So here, this is us saying, when this thing successfully gets hashed, please run this function on my behalf. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay, and what is our callback function doing? This guy right here.
It's hashing. So saying the password is gonna equal hash password.
Good.
And
so we're making use of the hash password that we got back from bcrypt. And we're setting the password in the user object to be equal to that.
The next, I don't know what the next does. I don't know what that is.
So think of the next as being just just whatever process is supposed to run after this. Okay.
Okay.
So in other words, whatever Mongoose needs to do after it's saved a document, that's what's going to happen now because we called this next function.
Okay.
All right. Or actually, I should say not after it saves the document because we did pre-save, right? So we're doing all of this stuff before the save happens, which means that when I call next, then the next should actually be the save action itself.
Okay. All right.
All right, well done. Users controller. I think we'll just do that one method in there and then we'll call it. Baxter, what's going on here on line 4 through 11?
All right. So 4 through 11, we have our rec request arguments that we're passing to our register function. Inside of that, we have our rec body, and it looks like we're passing out. I don't know if it's a callback function with JSON.
So don't forget about this. We're taking our user model and then we're invoking the create method on that model, right?
Right.
With the rec.body. So we're passing in all the form data.
True,
okay.
True.
And that returns what? What does line 5 return?
So line 5 is going to return all of the JSON stuff in the middle there.
Uh-oh. No, line 5 is going to return us a promise, right?
Oh, promise.
That's why we need to chain this .then call on it. Okay, and then our success callback is doing what?
It's pretty much passing the status and ID keys with the value success and the new user ID.
Okay, so I'm returning some JSON, and then the JSON that I want is going to be this new object that I just created here. This object has a key of status with a value of success. It's got a key of ID, and then I've set that equal to my new user's ID. Okay. All right, and I'll just run through this too because we're pretty short of time. Inside of our error callback, I'm taking an error in, and then I'm returning res.status of 400, meaning that there was something bad about that request, right? And then I'm also passing back the JSON, which just has the error in it.
Morley, how pressed are we for time? Is that a couple questions about the validators?
Yeah, we're actually really pressed for time, but I'd be happy to like jump on a separate call with you.
Yeah, that totally works. All right.
Yeah. So probably in like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or something. Just remind me through Mattermost and I'll get something going with you.
Okay, I'll hit you around noon then, I guess.
Perfect. All right, guys, so I'm going to let you all go. Let me stop the recording here. Where is the recording? Oh, here we go.